Hey, it's James Chambers here. You know, one of the questions I get asked often about evangelism is how do I start the spiritual conversation with my friends? You know, when I get asked questions like that, I instantly go back to, when I was a college student and my intro to Buddhism class. It was just coming from our field trip to a Buddhist temple. It was a wonderful experience. We got a chance to experience some of the meditational practices and talk to people that practice Buddhism there at the temple and learn more about that culture and about that faith. You know, I was thinking, man, this is a great opportunity, the perfect opportunity, I felt like, to be able to share or to start spiritual conversations with my friends and my classmates on the bus ride home. And as I'm sitting on the bus ride home, I'm trying to think of like, well, how do I start the actual conversation? Like, I'm trying to think of all the scriptures in the Bible that, may kind of relate to Buddhism and, peace and being one with God and one with man and all the love and all the different things that we have in common with Buddhism. And nothing's working in my mind, at least. I'm also trying to think about what are some like cool questions that can kind of like almost trick them into a spiritual conversation and make them realize they had a desire they really didn't have and all this kind of stuff. As I'm doing this, nothing in my mind is working. Literally about 45 minutes goes by on this hour-long bus ride, and I'm sitting across from my friend Mark, and I have not asked him a question at all. And I'm thinking like, okay, let me just dive in and see what happens. So I just simply dive in and just give you a little background. Mark is that kind of guy that's like so relaxed about everything. Not really have a lot of passions, doesn't get too upset about certain things. So to have like a deep conversation about something of something that means a lot to us is usually pretty rare. So I dive in and say, hey, Mark, what did you think about the trip to the Buddhist temple? It was all right. Okay, I hope the conversation goes further than this. I asked him a second question. So what aspect of the trip did you think was the best? Did you like the meditational practices? Did you like what the people that practice Buddhism were sharing about the faith? Like, what did you like? The meditation was kind of cool. I was real tired, so I kind of fell asleep. Dang, like, is this conversation going to go anywhere? I just feel like I'm like shooting myself in the head or in the foot, wherever you want to shoot yourself. And I don't know what to do next. So I just asked him one final question. I was like, by any chance, have you ever been interested in like spiritual things ever? Mark answers no, not really. I was like, oh, cool. And we pull up to the college right at that point. I feel kind of like, man, this went nowhere. I wish I knew how to actually talk to somebody about faith. And he goes off to his dorm room, back to his normal life. I don't know if you can relate to a story like that, but sometimes I feel like in starting the spiritual conversation, I have to trick my friend into the conversation and say the right things, the right time, the right way. How do I create curiosity in the person? All these kinds of things. What I want to do in this video is I want to give you, those of you that are desiring to have, spiritual conversation with your friends that you love and that you care about, I want to give you a simple, direct, and comfortable way that you can approach this conversation. This conversation can be very normal. Most of the time you'll be speaking with people you already know or who are your friends. Like I said earlier in the video, I use this actually a lot with strangers and people who I don't know at all. What I'm going to show you, why these series of questions and this way of having a conversation works is this direct. It gets what you want to talk about out on the table very simply and very quickly. But also the conversation is very comfortable because you're going to be asking them questions where they are the expert in their own life and they share with you. People love to talk about themselves and love to share when people really care and really want to listen. So what I'm going to give you is not a script of what to say and what to kind of dump your agenda onto them and what to preach to them about. I want to give you just a series of questions that really helps you to get to know that person more, care about them more deeply, and listen to their own unique story. So let's begin. What you're going to find in these questions in this video here are three things. Number one, open-ended questions that allow the person to share with you. Number two, how you can relate to the person after they share the answers to their open-ended questions. And then number three, how do you actually arc and transition into the gospel near the end of the conversation? So let's begin. The first question I usually ask is, do you have a spiritual background that you come from? How were you raised as a kid or as a teenager in regards to spiritual things? This question is good because it gets the topic right out on the table up front, and it also allows them to share about their own life. And their defenses are usually down, and they don't feel like they're being offended or attacked by you because you're simply asking them a question about their life instead of leading with a question about, Jesus or about, faith and things like that, where you're trying to get your desire on them. You're simply asking them about their background. Another question I'll ask after that is, or in tandem with that is, as you were growing up, were there any special spiritual moments in your life? Maybe was there a time that you really felt close to God? And in this question, what I'm usually looking for and what I'm listening for are ways that God has been at work in their lives, drawing them to himself, and they may not even know it. There may have been some kind of struggle that they had when they were a kid or a teenager of deep pain or of confusion where so much comfort and peace came. There could have been a person that spoke words of love or words of truth, revealing Jesus and God to them as they were a child. And I want to listen for that. The next thing I'm going to do now is, after they've shared, is I'm going to relate with them. Number one, I want to affirm whatever they've shared and say, wow, thank you for sharing that. That's amazing that, they may have shared they had a grandmother that's been taking them to church or always prayed for them when they were going through tough times. I would affirm that and just bless that and say, wow, that's so awesome that you had a grandmother that cared about you just like that. Man, that is such a gift from God. The second thing, I'm also actually continuing on that affirmation piece. What I want to affirm, I want to listen for ways they have shown or expressed spiritual curiosity, spiritual interest, any steps that they've taken toward exploring spiritualities in their life. So even if they're from another faith, for example, if they're Muslim, I want to affirm the fact that they pray 5 times a day, or the fact that they've practiced Ramadan because they want to try to get closer to God. I'll just say, man, that is so awesome that you are recognizing that there's a God and that you want to get to know him or please him in some kind of a way. That's amazing. Tell me about your experience in Ramadan. Tell me about your experience as you've prayed those 5 times a day. What was that like for you? And I just want to sincerely care and honor what they're doing and their ways that they're trying to approach God. The second thing I want to do as I'm relating is now interpret. I want to interpret whatever they've shared with me and whatever ways I've seen them go after spiritual things, ways that I personally see God working in their lives, though they may not be aware of it. So, for example, let's take the person with the grandmother that I mentioned earlier. I would say, man, you know what it sounds like to me? It sounds like God put your grandmother in your life as a person, as a way of showing he's reaching out to you. By her prayers, by her caring for you in hard times and showing you the love of Jesus. That's what it sounds like to me. The other example of the person that's practicing Ramadan and their Muslim faith, I will interpret those experiences for them and just bring and highlight to them that, man, wow, it sounds like God has really given you an awesome desire to really want to know him and want to search out for him. I want to encourage you. Acts 17 says that God has prepared the times and the places that we all live, guys. And he's done that so that we can reach out for him and find him, though he's not far away. This is why I want to interpret the experiences for them, because I'm recognizing that though they may see the different events in their lives as random acts or random events, God has actually said he has actually predestined times and places they will live and arrange situations so they can reach out for him and find him, though he's not far away. That's what I'm doing in his interpretation time. So that's what happens when you relate. Let's go on to a couple more questions and we'll finish up here. The next question I'll ask is, now that we've talked about their past, let's now bring things to their future, to their present. Let's talk about spiritualities now in their lives. 2 questions I simply ask are this. Where would you say your faith is with God right now? Is it something you're actively seeking to grow in? Or is it kind of on the back burner? What I love about this question, again, is that it's non-threatening. All of us can relate to times when our faith has been so excited, we're going after it. And many of us can relate to our times where our faith has kind of been like a 3rd or 4th priority and it's on the back burner. We just use this question now to allow them to locate themselves and allow us to locate where they are in their spiritual curiosity and their spiritual fervor and seeking out. After they share where they are, they may say on the back burner or I'm currently seeking. I ask them simply, can you tell me a little bit more about that? Why are you seeking so much right now? Or what has led to your faith being on the back burner right now? After they share, again, I relate. I relate with aspects of their story that I've heard them share. And then I share a small part of my own story that they can relate to that may be similar. And I share it in a way that leaves them wanting more and longing for more. So for example, I remember I was talking with a friend who had grown up going to church camp a lot, and her faith was totally on the back burner in college. And I began to ask her, I said, hey, so you said you used to go to church camp? Wow, you don't really strike me as like a religious person. Tell me more about your experience at church camp. She said, well, we had a lot of fun, and we played games, we'll stay there for a whole week, but I didn't really understand a lot, and so I didn't really care too much. I was like, wow, I have a similar situation where I grew up going to church a lot, and I always kind of had like a desire to want to know more, but I never really understood a lot. No one actually took time to break down what the faith in Jesus meant. And so can I share with you like how I overcame that and how I've really come to enjoy faith in God a lot my own self? And then she said yes. And I simply began to share with her how I began to read the Bible for the first time. I began to read, Galatians and Romans and Colossians and 1 John, all these different books. And I began to understand about God's love for myself. So simply all I did right there relating was acknowledging what they shared and sharing a small part, maybe 2 minutes at most, from my own life that leaves them wanting more. And she leaned in to listen to my story and said, wow, that's really cool. That'd be kind of nice. The next question I will ask after I share from my own life is, what would you need to increase your interest in growing closer to God? Or what would you need to increase your ability to grow more in your faith? And again, I want to listen and then relate to what they share. As I relate, again, I want to identify with ways that they want to grow closer to God by sharing ways that I myself personally needed to grow closer to God based on what they shared. So again, all you're doing in relating is listening to what they've shared, sharing a little bit from your story so they can relate with you, but then sharing a little bit more so they actually want more, and then you invite them into it. So those are the first two parts. Concluding here with this last maybe minute or two here, I want to show you how to now transition and arc to the gospel out of that conversation. So here's what you can do. After you've shared all of that, this is probably a 10-minute conversation by this point. And now what I would begin to ask is this. Have you ever heard of the word gospel? We've been talking about these spiritual things, and I've kind of shared a little bit about my life. Have you ever heard the word gospel before? And many people have heard the word gospel, but not many people have really understood it. And so I use that as a word, as a way to kind of like entice them a little bit, because they kind of hear it, but they don't really know what it means a lot of times. So the next question I'll ask them is, do you understand what the word gospel means? And then I'll just listen. Share with me what you think gospel means. And I'll listen to what they share. Based on what they share, if they give a good answer or an answer that is still kind of lacking or wanting for more, I do this. Number one, I affirm the true things that they've shared about the word gospel, what they have understood, and I affirm them. Number two, I give them my best summary of God's plan to reconcile all of the world to himself in Jesus. How God has loved the world and sent Jesus to reconcile all of mankind and all of the brokenness in our world to restore it for good. As I share that, in essence, sometimes there are like booklets like based on a true story by James Chung that you can summarize that booklet in like maybe 2 or 3 sentences and share what the gospel is. And then simply what I will do after sharing that tract or sharing that kind of a booklet in my own form of a summary, I will then share how it impacted my life and make it personal. So that whole little section right there might take like 2 or 3 minutes. I explain what the gospel is in a very short, concise way, explain how it impacted my life, and then ask them, I was like, wow, actually I'll probably tell them, if what I share with you kind of interests you and you want to know more, I have this little booklet here that I can give you, and I'll give them some sort of a gospel booklet like based on a true story by James Chung, or the New World Gospel Outline, or I might even draw the bridge diagram for them real quick and give them to this. Say, hey, read through this booklet if you like, and I like the conversation that we had. Thank you for sharing so much with me and opening yourself. That was really cool of you to do that. I enjoyed the conversation. If you want to know more about this, I would love to get together with you in a couple of days, and we can talk more about the booklet I just gave you. And then at that point, I just simply give them the booklet, and we just continue to go on about our everyday conversation or whatever we were doing before that. That usually takes, 15 minutes. It's gone as long as 45 minutes sometimes with people. But I wanted to just make this quick video and show you all, for those of you that want to step out and have conversations with your friends, these are the questions, these are the ways that I go about being direct, simple, and comfortable in approaching my friends about starting the spiritual conversation, just to get it out there on the table and to have a conversation in a very normal, simple way. So again, I'm James Chambers, and bless you. Go forward, have fun getting to know your friends and the story that God has been writing in their lives.